When I finally moved out on my own, my brother demanded $10,000, and my parents called me heartless, but I left them to fix their own disaster. I'm Lauren. I'm 32, single, and until recently I lived in what used to be my parents' extra apartment in Richmond. It was a modest one-bedroom place near Monroe Park that had been empty since my folks downsized to their suburban house 10 years ago. When I got my first job at a pharmaceutical research lab, my mom offered me the space with strings attached, specifically a monthly contribution of $950. It was a little steep for something technically owned by family, but compared to what other places cost, I said yes. I thought maybe, just maybe, paying rent would earn me a little respect. I took pride in being the responsible one. I had worked part-time since high school, graduated on a full scholarship, and landed a salaried job before I even picked up my diploma. Meanwhile, my younger brother Tyler, now 30, hadn't made it past a semester of community college and hadn't held any job for longer than 2 months. He bounced between his room at home and business ideas that were really just half-baked internet schemes. Still, my parents treated Tyler like a misunderstood genius waiting for the world to catch up. Every time he failed, they threw a pillow under him. Every time he blew money, they offered more. They excused it all with lines like, "He's creative, he's exploring his potential," and my personal favorite, "Some people take longer to find their path." All while I handed over rent money and showed up to Sunday dinners with a bottle of wine, pretending like I didn't notice the favoritism burning through the walls. That apartment started out bare bones. Old carpet, dented appliances, a cracked bathroom mirror, and furniture that looked like it hadn't been touched since 1998. So, I did what any adult would. I fixed it. I saved up for a new couch, bought a solid bed frame, upgraded the fridge when the old one started wheezing like it had asthma. Every time I planned a purchase, I texted my mom for her blessing. Her answer was always a variation of "sure, just don't go too crazy," so I kept everything tasteful and neutral. I paid for it all, from the curtains to the silverware, without asking for a single dime. I poured thousands into that space. It wasn't mine on paper, but it became my home, quiet, stable, safe. I even replaced the washing machine when it flooded the kitchen one night at 2 a.m. My dad never offered to help cover the cost, and my mom said, "That's just part of living on your own." I nodded, because I thought being the good kid meant sucking it up. That phrase, "living on your own," stuck with me though, especially when they kept calling it our apartment every time I visited. It wasn't Lauren's place, not even the apartment. It was always, "How's everything at our apartment?" like I was just a long-term guest they were generously tolerating. Things took a sharp turn when Tyler married Sierra. She was this wide-eyed 20-something who called herself a digital creator and took filtered selfies like it was a full-time job. Her idea of income was promoting protein bars and filming makeup tutorials in their kitchen. My parents couldn't stop praising her. "She's building a personal brand," my mom would say, like Sierra was the next Oprah instead of someone uploading the same contour video every week to a shrinking pool of followers. Sierra took over family dinners the moment she stepped into the picture. I'll never forget the first meal with her sitting at the head of the table, bossing my dad around about lighting so she could take photos of her plate. She'd scream, "Wait, don't eat yet," just to capture content, while my parents smiled like the circus act was adorable. One time, I bit into a sandwich that had been sitting on the counter, only to be yelled at for ruining her aesthetic. I spent the next 10 minutes being scolded like a 5-year-old who had drawn on the walls. She told me I had no respect for her work and didn't understand what it meant to be in the public eye. After that disaster, I started showing up late to family events or skipping them entirely. Sierra never talked about anything besides brand partnerships that never materialized or her engagement metrics, whatever that meant. Tyler sat beside her like a proud manager, nodding every time she mentioned her dream of launching her own product line. A line of what? Who knew? She never had a clear answer, just vague mentions of lifestyle and wellness. Meanwhile, I kept working 10-hour shifts, building my savings, pretending I wasn't screaming on the inside while being treated like the afterthought of my own family. I kept paying rent. I kept fixing things in the apartment. I kept my head down and ignored the fact that my parents never once asked about my career or whether I was okay. Their emotional bandwidth was fully absorbed by Tyler and Sierra. First their wedding, then Sierra's audience growth, then their latest, business plan involving handmade candles that never got made. It became clear that my role in the family was to fund myself quietly while they focused on propping up two adults who couldn't balance a checkbook. What stung most was the subtle way they reminded me that nothing was ever really mine. One Christmas, I gave my mom a framed photo of us from my college graduation. She thanked me, set it down, and 2 minutes later turned to Sierra to ask how many new followers she'd gained that week. That photo was later found shoved behind a bookshelf when I came over to help hang new curtains. But I didn't say anything. I never said anything. I just swallowed it like every other slight. By the time Sierra announced her pregnancy, I knew I was hanging on to a version of my family that didn't exist anymore. They cheered like she'd won an award. My mom cried. My dad opened a bottle of wine and toasted to new beginnings. Tyler started talking about needing a bigger car and home office for Sierra's content. The whole night felt like a script they'd written long before I arrived. I smiled, nodded, said congratulations. But in that moment, I felt something shift. Something cold, like a countdown had started. I didn't know when the clock would hit 0, but it was ticking. 2 weeks after the pregnancy announcement, my mother showed up at my apartment without calling first. She used her copy of the key like it still belonged to her, walked right in while I was pulling laundry from the dryer, and started scanning the room like a property inspector. No knocking, no courtesy, no acknowledgement that barging in wasn't okay. She looked around in silence for a moment, taking in the furniture, the layout, the personal touches I'd added over the years, then turned to me and said, "We need to talk. Sit down." I offered her coffee, mostly out of habit, but she waved it off like I was wasting her time. The urgency in her tone didn't match the expression on her face. Critical, almost calculating, like she'd already decided how this conversation would end. We sat on opposite sides of the couch I had bought myself, and she jumped straight into it. "Sierra's pregnant, and things are going to change," she said, as if I hadn't been sitting right there during the dramatic family dinner announcement. I didn't respond. I just waited for the real reason she'd come. She gave me this rehearsed speech about how much support Sierra would need, how doctor appointments and prenatal vitamins and nursery furniture weren't cheap, and how babies didn't just require love, but financial sacrifice. She kept using the word "we," as if I'd already signed on to whatever plan they were cooking up. And then she said it, flat, unapologetic. "Your rent's going up. Starting next month, you'll be paying $28.50. I didn't even know how to respond at first. I blinked at her, wondering if I had misheard. That was 3 times what I'd been paying, and almost double what any reasonable apartment in the neighborhood cost. "You're serious?" I asked, though I could already see that she was. She didn't flinch. She didn't explain. She said, "This is about helping your family. Tyler and Sierra need us, and this is how you can contribute." Like I was a donor, not a daughter. Like I hadn't already given enough just by being the responsible one all these years. I pointed out that Tyler was the one with a pregnant wife and no job, not me. Shouldn't he be supporting his own household? Her tone shifted. Irritated now. "Tyler is trying. He's working on a new project, and Sierra is growing her platform. They're building something together, and they need time." I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask how long Tyler would be trying, how many more years they were willing to let him avoid adulthood while I kept footing the bill. But I stayed quiet for one more beat, looked her straight in the face, and said, "Then I guess I'll be moving out." She didn't try to stop me. She stood up, said, "Suit yourself," and walked out like we just finished a business transaction. I stood in the living room, the quiet pressing down on me, and let the reality sink in. I had spent 8 years turning this place into something that felt like mine, even when it technically wasn't. But now, it was just a room full of my things inside someone else's property. The illusion was gone, and I wasn't going to beg for it back. That night, I opened my laptop and started looking for listings. I had enough saved for first and last month's rent and a deposit, thanks to years of budgeting and planning. The second apartment I visited was older, less charming than the one I was in, but it had sunlight and hardwood floors and a landlord who respected boundaries. Rent was $1,600 a month, which felt like a steal compared to the absurd price my parents had thrown at me. I filled out the application immediately, handed over the deposit, and was approved the next morning. I took a personal day from work, rented a truck, and packed everything I owned into boxes. That was the part that hit me the hardest. Everything in that apartment was mine. The couch, the bed, the fridge, the dishes, the lamps, even the artwork on the walls. I had brought it all in, one paycheck at a time. The only thing that didn't belong to me was an old wooden table that had been there when I moved in. I left it behind, and on it, I left a note. Just 2 words. Good luck. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't tell them the address. I sent a single text to my mother that night. I moved out. Thanks for everything. She read it, but didn't respond. I turned my phone face down on the table and decided to enjoy my silence. For 48 hours, I thought maybe that was the end of it. No calls, no texts, no unexpected visits. I unpacked my boxes, rearranged my space, and sat on my couch at night, staring out the window, realizing how strange it felt to finally breathe. Then, on Friday afternoon, the phone started ringing, first my mom, then my dad, then Tyler. I ignored every call until the 6th one, when my mom's name popped up again and my curiosity got the better of me. The second I answered, she was yelling, "Lauren, what the hell did you do? You emptied the entire apartment." I said calmly, "I took everything I bought. You never paid for any of it." She shrieked, "We already promised a new renter a fully furnished unit. They're expecting furniture on Monday." I laughed because I couldn't help it. "Then maybe you should have talked to me before assuming you could keep my stuff." She threatened to get a lawyer involved. That made me laugh harder. "Please do," I said. "But you might want to think about how the IRS would feel hearing that you've been collecting rent for 8 years under the table." Silence. Heavy and thick. And then she said it, her voice tight and hateful. "You're not our daughter anymore." I paused. "Let it sink in." "If that's how you feel," I said, and hung up. The next few hours were a blur of vibrating phone alerts and long, self-righteous messages from Tyler and Sierra. They called me selfish, bitter, ungrateful, jealous. Sierra left me a voice memo saying I'd ruined everything, that I didn't understand what it was like to build a brand, that her pregnancy was a sacred journey I should have been honored to support. I blocked them all and kept blocking every new number that popped up. I slept better that weekend than I had in months. No guilt, no noise, no reminders that I was somehow never enough for people who never gave me room to be anything more. My new apartment was still half empty, but it already felt more mine than the last place ever had. I started cooking again. I hung up art on the walls without asking for approval. For the first time in nearly a decade, I could stretch out and feel the quiet as something comforting, not oppressive. On Monday, I ran into Candace at the grocery store. She was the cousin who always knew more than she should. She waved me over near the checkout line and leaned in close. "So, your mom's telling everyone you stole from them," she whispered. I rolled my eyes. "Of course she is." Candace snorted. "She also says you're greedy, heartless, and trying to destroy the family." I smiled. "Sounds about right." She paused, then said, "But honestly, Lauren, no one really believes her. Everyone knows Tyler hasn't lifted a finger in years. They think what your parents did was insane." That surprised me more than I expected. I asked how they were doing. Her face twisted. "Not great. They can't rent the apartment for anything close to what they were charging you. Dropped the price twice. Sierra's demanding to move in now, but your parents won't let her. They're hoping to find a tenant who can actually pay." I felt a flicker of satisfaction. Not schadenfreude, exactly. Just justice. Consequences. Reality pulling up a chair and joining the party. I nodded and walked away, groceries in hand, a little bit lighter than before. It had been almost 2 months since I moved, and I'd managed to go completely no contact. I blocked every number from home, ignored every attempt to draw me back in, and refused to let guilt rewrite my memory of what they'd done. For the first time since college, my weekends belonged to me again. I slept in, drank coffee in silence, took walks through the neighborhood, and decorated my space with colors and furniture I didn't need permission to buy. I was slowly rebuilding a sense of ownership over my life, one quiet day at a time. The tension in my chest had lessened, the constant pressure to perform as the good daughter finally melting away. But I should have known peace with my family never lasted long. One Thursday evening, I stayed late at work finishing a grant proposal when I saw him standing next to my car, Tyler, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair greasy, And he had this desperate look I hadn't seen since we were kids, and he broke our dad's laptop and needed me to lie for him. He smiled like nothing was wrong. Hey, he said, can we talk? Maybe grab coffee. I should have kept walking. Every instinct in me said to turn around. But I was tired and curious, and I wanted to know what new circus they were trying to rope me into. We sat in a half-empty coffee shop near the lab. I ordered a drink. He didn't. When the barista asked what he wanted, he said, nothing. I can't afford coffee right now. That set the tone immediately. I waited. He started by saying how hard it had been lately, how the apartment was still empty, how Sierra was struggling emotionally and needed a fresh start in a place of their own. He said they were looking to move out of my parents' house, but needed a little help getting started. I stared at him in silence, waiting for the ask. And then it came. He wanted $10,000. Just a loan, he said. Enough to cover first month's rent, furniture, some baby stuff. I'll pay you back once the podcast starts generating income. Podcast? I blinked. He explained that he'd started a show about cryptocurrency trends and financial independence. It had 3 episodes. He said it was a passion project that would definitely catch on if he just had more time and better equipment. I sat back, stunned that even now, when they were backed into a corner, broke, overwhelmed, stressed, his big plan was still another fantasy business idea. Tyler, I said carefully, you've never held a real job. Not for more than 3 months. You've jumped from crypto mining to candle making to online coaching, and every time it fizzled out. What makes this any different? His face flushed red. You don't believe in me, he snapped. You never have. I held my voice steady. No, I don't believe in enabling you anymore. That's not the same thing. He raised his voice. You got promoted. You live alone. You could help if you wanted to. I glanced around. People were starting to turn and look. I stood up, grabbing my bag. I'm not doing this. You're 30 years old with a child on the way. Get a job. I walked out while he was still mid-sentence. He didn't follow me. He just sat there, shoulders slumped, like his world had caved in and I was supposed to rescue him from the collapse. That night, my cousin Candace called again. Your mom's furious, she said. Tyler told them you refused. She's saying you've abandoned the family. I almost laughed. What else is new? But Candace wasn't finished. Things are getting worse at the house. Sierra and your mom are fighting constantly. They can't find a tenant, and now your dad's talking about getting a part-time job just to keep up with expenses. That gave me pause. My father had been semi-retired for years. The idea of him stocking shelves at 68 because his adult son couldn't hold a job made me feel something between rage and disbelief. Brianna threw a plate, Candace added. Apparently, your mom wouldn't babysit while she went to an influencer meetup. The idea of Sierra yelling that it wasn't her job to watch her own child while living rent-free under someone else's roof just confirmed everything I'd always known about her. She was entitled, manipulative, and utterly unprepared for adult responsibilities. And my parents, for all their delusional optimism, had finally met their match in someone more demanding than even Tyler. They'd spent years enabling him, but now that dynamic was turning inward and ripping their household apart. And honestly, I didn't feel sorry for them. They created this chaos. I just escaped it. A week later, my mother showed up at my job. She was waiting near the building entrance when I walked out after a long meeting. I almost turned back, but she'd already seen me. Just 5 minutes, she said. She looked tired. Her makeup was faded, and there were new lines on her face. I agreed to 5 minutes and followed her to a bench. She started with pleasantries, trying to smile like nothing had happened. Lauren, we miss you. The family's falling apart without you. I didn't respond. She pressed on. I didn't mean what I said about not being my daughter. I was upset. I nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. And then she dropped her latest plea. Tyler's trying. They just need a little more time. If you could help, just temporarily, it might get them out of the house. I cut her off. You raised him for 30 years, and he still doesn't know how to support himself. That's not my fault. And it's not my job to fund his lifestyle while you keep pretending he's some misunderstood genius who just needs the right opportunity. She flinched, but didn't argue. You were always the responsible one, she said. We know that. We were proud of you. I turned away, shaking my head. You had a funny way of showing it. I got 2 promotions this year. I'm buying a house. And nobody asked me a single question about it. She tried to stop me when I stood up. Lauren, please. Don't walk away. I looked her in the eyes and said the words I'd been holding in for years. When Tyler gets a job and acts like an adult, maybe we'll talk. Until then, I'm not your ATM. I'm not your plan B. I'm just your daughter, and you've treated me like a stranger. I left without waiting for a response. She didn't follow. 3 weeks passed. No texts, no calls, no unannounced visits. I thought maybe the message had finally landed. But then Candace called again, breathless and amused. You will not believe this, she said. Sierra wants to move into your old apartment. She's demanding it now. Says she needs independence. But your parents won't let her because they need the rent money, even if it's only $1,200 a month. Your dad's close to signing up for delivery driving, and your mom's been calling everyone in the family asking for help. It was only a matter of time before she reached out again. And sure enough, she started asking around for my address. Candace told her she didn't know it, but that didn't stop her. The calls came to my office line. The emails hit my inbox. She was grasping for any way back in, and I stayed firm. I didn't budge, because I had built something worth protecting, a life that wasn't defined by guilt or obligation. One where I didn't exist just to plug holes in other people's bad decisions. That life had cost me years to build, and I wasn't giving it up for anyone. A few months after my last conversation with my mother, my life looked drastically different. I was finally sleeping full nights without stressed dreams about unpaid rent or being dragged back into family drama. My new apartment, though smaller, had become something stable and warm, my own lamplit corner of the world. I focused on my job, where my manager had recently given me the lead on a new research initiative, and I started going on regular dates with someone I'd met at a professional networking mixer. Grant was kind, grounded, and asked thoughtful questions about my work. The first time I mentioned my family situation, he didn't flinch. They didn't value your independence, he said. You did the right thing by walking away. His words stuck with me, especially when Candace started calling again with fresh chaos from the inside. It had been 4 months since I moved out, and from what she told me, things inside my parents' house had imploded. My father, now pushing 68, had started working part-time at a hardware store to make up for their shrinking finances. The apartment I left behind hadn't found a stable tenant. They had rented it once, briefly, but the guy broke the lease after 2 months because of the noise complaints and the poor state of the furnishings my parents had scraped together. My mother refused to invest more money into the place, and Sierra was still demanding that she be allowed to move in, arguing that she deserved it for everything she'd sacrificed during her pregnancy. Meanwhile, Sierra's influencer career hadn't gone the way she imagined. She was now posting less and complaining more. Apparently, she thought having a baby would boost her platform, but the reality of motherhood was ruining her content schedule. The baby cried through her videos, disrupted her lighting setups, and kept her from uploading regularly. Her sponsorships dried up. Her followers stopped growing. And instead of pivoting like any other adult might, she doubled down on blaming everyone else. She told my mother that the house was toxic, that she couldn't build her brand in such a negative environment, and that if they didn't make space for her to move into the apartment, she'd leave Tyler and take the baby with her. That was the latest threat. Take the baby and disappear. I didn't even know where she thought she'd go. Her family wasn't in a position to take her in, and Tyler had no money of his own. But the fact that she was even using her child as leverage in a power struggle with my parents told me everything I needed to know. I told Candace to keep me updated, but reminded her that I wasn't going to step in. I didn't care how messy it got. I had been treated like a spare credit card for too long to feel sympathy now that their choices had come home to roost. About a week later, my mother showed up again. This time, it wasn't at work. It was outside my apartment building, leaning against her car like she belonged there. I froze for a second, keys in hand, debating whether to pretend I didn't see her and keep walking. But she spotted me and called my name, and part of me wanted to hear what excuse she was going to offer this time. I walked over, arms crossed, and stopped a few feet away. 5 minutes, I said. She looked older than before, drawn, brittle. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. Lauren, We need your help. The family is falling apart. Your brother and Sierra are fighting constantly. The apartment is bleeding money. We just need some relief." I didn't say anything. I just waited. She continued, "Your father's been working nights. I'm managing bills, cooking, babysitting. And it's exhausting. You know what it's like to work full time." I nodded. "Yes, that's what I've been doing for years, while paying you rent and fixing your apartment with my own money." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. "Look," she said, "we've made mistakes, but we're still your family." I stepped back just slightly. "Let me ask you something," I said. "When was the last time Tyler paid for anything with money he earned? When was the last time he held a job, stuck with it, and built a life that didn't require someone else to bail him out?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. I kept going. "You keep acting like this is a temporary setback, but this is who he is. You just didn't want to admit it." She looked away. I knew it was harsh, but I didn't care anymore. Then she tried guilt. "What about your nephew? He's innocent in all this. He deserves better." I nodded slowly. "Then maybe his parents should have thought about that before they treated everyone like backup plans. I'm not raising someone else's kid. I'm not funding someone else's chaos. I gave you 8 years of rent. I paid my dues." She whispered, "Your brother said you were heartless. But I don't believe that." I almost laughed. "I'm not heartless. I'm just done." I walked away before she could say anything else. A week passed. No new updates. Then Candace called again, this time sounding almost gleeful. "You'll want to hear this one," she said. "Tyler tried to start a new business, some kind of fitness supplement affiliate deal, but he put the expenses on mom and dad's credit card. It flopped within 3 weeks." I sighed. Of course it did. But she wasn't done. Sierra found out and lost her mind. Said she's sick of bailing him out. They had a fight in the driveway so loud a neighbor called the police. No one was arrested, but your dad ended up staying in a motel that night just to sleep in peace. Every detail was like a confirmation that I'd done the right thing. Every time Candace gave me a new piece of the saga, I felt a little more distant from it, like it was happening in another world entirely. I'd stopped seeing myself in that mess. They were no longer my burden. They were people I used to know, still making the same mistakes I finally escaped. And while they were imploding, I was quietly preparing for something better. I'd been pre-approved for a mortgage. I was looking at homes just outside the city. My promotion had come with a bonus, and Grant had started talking about moving in once I found the right place. I didn't need validation from my family anymore. I had built a life that they couldn't take credit for, couldn't control, and couldn't ruin. And every day I spent away from them felt like one step closer to becoming someone they never really bothered to know. 3 weeks ago, Candace called me while I was on my way to a house showing. I'd just finished reviewing paperwork with my realtor and had a folder of mortgage options in my bag. The place I was visiting wasn't huge, but it had a little fenced backyard, hardwood floors, and enough space for me and maybe a dog someday. I answered Candace's call on speaker and expected the usual update about Sierra's latest meltdown or Tyler's newest business failure. But her voice was different, tight with tension, maybe even disbelief. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "Sierra told Tyler she's done. She's taking the baby and moving in with her sister. Said she's tired of living in a house full of failure." I let out a small, humorless laugh. "And where's she going to get the money?" Candace sighed. "She doesn't have any. But I think she's serious this time. She's packed bags." I pulled into the driveway of the house I was going to tour and sat there, watching the porch sway slightly in the wind. "Let her go," I said. "Maybe it'll be the wake-up call Tyler needs." But that wasn't the end. A few days later, my mom sent me an email. Not a call, not a text. A long, emotional email. She said she missed me, that she wished things hadn't gotten so confused, that she knew I felt hurt and overlooked. But then she shifted tone halfway through and asked if I'd reconsider helping Tyler now that Sierra had left. "He's truly alone," she wrote. "He's devastated. He's lost everything. He needs his sister." I read the message 3 times before closing the laptop. I didn't reply. I didn't reply because I finally understood that none of this was about love or closeness. It was always about control, about roles, about expecting me to be the stable one, the one who always showed up, while Tyler was allowed to drift through life with no consequences. The moment I stopped playing that role, the whole system cracked. And now that it had collapsed completely, they were hoping I'd step back in and patch it up. But I wasn't going back. I couldn't. A few days after I closed on the house, Grant helped me carry in the first box. It wasn't a dramatic moment. No ribbon cutting or champagne. But as I stepped into that empty living room with my name on the deed, I felt a kind of peace I hadn't known in years. This wasn't just a place to live. It was proof. Proof that walking away hadn't been selfish. Proof that choosing myself wasn't cruel. It was necessary. The night after I moved in, I opened that same laptop, found my mom's email, and finally typed a reply. Just one line. I hope you all find what you're looking for, but I've already found what I need. Then I logged out and closed the door behind me.